The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 185 with Mark Sweeney from AimPoint Golf.
And I came back and I told my instructor, like, I got this really cool read that's for young kids, and nobody really paid any attention to it. Then I showed it to Brian Gay, and Brian Gay went to Kapalua that 2 weeks later and shot the course record using it, and we didn't even really know how to use it properly. He shot whatever it was, 64 or something. And that's when I went, all right.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been watching golf and you'll see a player like a Justin Rose, Adam Scott, maybe Lydia Ko on the green getting ready to putt, and they walk up, between the ball and the cup, and they're kind of rocking back and forth, closing their eyes, and then they walk back behind the ball and they stick one or two fingers out in the air, kind of squinting one eye, and you're wondering, what are they doing? How is this working? And then they drain a putt. Well, today we're going to talk to the creator of the AimPoint Golf putting system, which is exactly what all of those players are using. And Mark has worked with over 100 touring professionals, including those that I just mentioned, and as well as thousands of amateur golfers all over the world, over 40 countries, and has been certifying instructors all over the world as well. Today, we're going to have Mark break down exactly what the AimPoint system consists of and how you can use it and how you can take it into your game and start to learn the process that these players are using as well. Mark's story is incredible, and I'm going to let him share it in the interview. But basically, he went from being a software engineer that created the virtual putting line that you may have seen on the Golf Channel many years ago, won an Emmy in 2008 for that software, for that program, to now coaching some of the best players and instructors in the world on how to strategically read greens. So it's not just kind of, figuring out, what's the lay of the land, but literally having a system to draining more putts. So I think you're really going to enjoy this because you're going to be able to take this and immediately apply what Mark teaches you. I also want to remind you that if you haven't checked out our video series that we created here at 18 Strong called Get Off the Golf Fitness Roller Coaster, I encourage you to go check that out at 18strong.com/roller coaster, where we created 4 videos that are going to walk you through the most important things that you should be doing, not only to move better, but to get stronger and basically just get your body ready to play some great golf this year. We hear it time and time again that golfers often don't know what they need to do, where they need to start. So this is really going to give you kind of a roadmap that you can follow. It's going to give you a daily routine of motions that you can be doing, movements that you can be doing to make sure that everything's moving right or to get them moving right. If they're not, we're going to teach you what exercises you should be doing and putting your focus on in your workouts so you're not wasting time. We know that time is of the essence for every golfer out there. And we're also going to show you how you can gain more distance with certain things that you can do in your workouts as well as on your off days. So go check that out at 18strong.com/roller coaster. All right, we're going to jump right in here with Mark Sweeney from AimPoint Golf. Yeah, I was talking to a couple clients of mine yesterday and telling them, oh, yeah, I'm going to have Mark from AimPoint on. And they're like, what is AimPoint? And I was kind of, letting them know. And I'm like, it's the finger thing, when you see the guys with the finger thing. So first of all, I think that there's many golfers out there, they see these professionals, doing that on the course. They've seen Stacey Lewis and Adam Scott and Lydia Ko, but they don't really understand what exactly is going on. So hopefully we can kind of clarify for them what they're actually doing. And it's not just kind of a little, like the plumb bob kind of a thing, that there's a whole lot more science to it. But first, if you could, because I know that the background started out way different than many people would expect with the TV and the line on the Golf Channel. So give us a little background on you and how that came about and then how it developed into this whole AimPoint putting system.
Well, the funny thing is everybody used to associate AimPoint with only the line on TV. And it actually took me a long time to get people to disassociate with that and associate with the fact that we actually teach a green reading system. So it's actually done kind of a full reversal in the last 5 or 6 years. The first product was actually not the TV product. It was a application. It was a Palm Pilot. So it was 2003. And it was an app that you put on your phone where the green comes up and it basically tells you your break. And now you see a few of them out there. But I did it back in 2003, and the technology wasn't ready for it because there was no Wi-Fi, there was no 3G or 4G, and you couldn't read the screens out in the sunlight. So I just basically gave up on it. I mean, I was 10 years too early on technology. And then very quickly moved to TV because somebody said to me, oh, the TV producers would love the putt prediction so that they can use it. So in 2004, I started doing demos for a TV graphic. And that actually dragged on. I didn't actually get on air till January of 2007. So there was quite a few years of just doing demonstrations and trying to convince people that you could actually predict what a putt did, because the mentality back then was that it was impossible and you're wasting your time and there's too many other factors and wind and grain and footprints and on and on and on and on. And everybody was just fighting the idea that you could actually predict with a high degree of accuracy what the ball was going to do before you hit it. So that was a big cultural hurdle I had to get past. Finally, Golf Channel decided to use it in January of 2007. And even after that, and we were live on TV showing lines, it still was 2 or 3 more years, I think, before people finally said, okay, this works pretty well,
Oh my gosh.
It took a long time. It was really painful, actually, because I almost quit a few times because it just didn't seem like it was going anywhere. And the best advice I got was a guy from the PGA Tour who said, if you really care about something in golf, you have to be patient because golf is very, very slow moving and it's going to take much longer than you think. And so I'm thinking, oh, this should take 6 months, and it ended up taking 3 years before the networks used it.
Oh
so he was right. Luckily, I was prepared for the fact that it was going to be kind of a long slog to get a foothold in golf. So anyway, did TV for about 6 years, and then during that slowly also transitioned into teaching, because you learn so much about green reading and predicting what the ball does that it's just a natural follow on to start teaching people what you know.
So how did you develop this whole system to be able to put it on TV in the first place? I mean, just that in general, how did that whole process come about, and the physics of it, and where did you learn that, and what's your background that allowed you to do that?
Well, my background is in software development. So I worked with Hewlett Packard. I worked in the finance group, but I did database development and application development. So I knew enough about software development that I could make it work. I'm not a hardcore programmer, but I can certainly write what I need to write to make it work. So I started just screwing around with it, frankly, because I was playing a lot of golf and kind of bored. And I wondered to myself why nobody had done this before. There had been some scientific articles about balls rolling on perfectly convex surfaces and things like that, but nobody had ever applied it to a real golf green. And the key success factor on that, there's a couple of them, but one of them you had to get a really good 3D topo of the green. And back in 2003, that was not easy to do because people were using GPSs, which are not super accurate. And it turns out the very first person I asked, a friend of mine was in the golf construction business. And I said, how do you get a really accurate topo? And he reached in his pocket and pulled out a card for a guy named Scott Poole, who at the time was the only person in the world who was doing laser scanning of golf greens.
Whoa.
Literally the only person in the world in 2003. And so I called him, and I've worked with him ever since. I still work with him. But he does super accurate laser scans of golf greens, and without those, you can't do an accurate prediction. So that was key factor number one, that I did just stroke of lightning. I got the right guy in the first time I asked. Second part is just getting the physics right and testing it out, because you're always making some simplifying assumptions, and you have to go through and say, well, the computer says it'll break 7 inches and it actually breaks 9, and you got to figure out why. Is the green speed calculation right? Is there grain issues? What is it? And that probably took 3 or 4 months to get right. And then we went to Kapalua, and I show up at Kapalua and the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour, and I didn't have a function for wind in it. So we had to build a wind function because at 10, 20 miles an hour, the wind is having a pretty big effect on the ball, a very big effect on the ball. So we had to add that in. So it was really, we really had to be super accurate because every line we did on TV was live, which means there was no post-production. There was no fixing a problem. We put the line up and the guy putted, and if it was wrong, I would get yelled at, basically.
Sure, of course.
So it really forced us to be as accurate as humanly possible down to maximum 2 inches. ideally 1 inch or less of accuracy, so the graphic looked correct on TV.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine all the testing involved. And so every time you guys went on TV with that, you had to have that green, laser scanned by Scott, and that was all taken care of well ahead of time, I would assume. Yeah,
the scan would happen anywhere from 2 weeks to a month ahead, so it was very it was very fresh data. But it was very stressful, because the thing about it is if the first putt worked, then they all worked. In other words, if the very first putt that goes up looks correct and the break is correct, then everything on the green worked, because the green is either right or it's not right. And luckily, with Scott's data, the green was always right. I mean, I never once had an issue, but it was always that first putt where they're going live and you're sitting there going, "Oh man, I hope this is right."
Fingers are crossed. You're sitting on the edge of your seat.
Well, you've got to get the green speed right, and you've got to get the wind right. The biggest screw up I ever made is Milwaukee. The wind was blowing, 20 miles an hour from left to right, and I accidentally put it in that was going from the opposite direction, from right to left. And part of it hits this putt that breaks like 8 feet and makes it. And my line was way too low. I think I had 5 feet of break, and he had 8 feet of break, so I had the wind wrong. It was like, oh man. Idiot. So that I remember that as being the worst graphic I ever did. Probably nobody else will ever remember it, but I remember just sweating bullets when that happened, because I just screwed up. Entered the number wrong.
So you have all this data, you have the software, all this stuff, and then, like you said, you started to then teach it. So how did you go from, because I assume initially you've got all this computer data, you're inputting all these different things, but now you're taking somebody that you're teaching, standing on the green, looking with the human eye, factoring all these other things in. How did you then kind of figure out, hey, we can actually take this and relate this to the golfer on the course itself?
Yeah, that was a difficult process, because the computer can do it very easily, but then you've got to say, all right, I'm a golfer standing on a green. I have no laser scans. I have no data. I don't have a computer program. The computer program that runs the putt predictions about 100,000 lines long. So there's a lot of calculations and a lot of data manipulation. We don't have that, right? So it started off fairly complex. The read did, and then it over time got easier and easier. And the very first read, which I won't even get into, is called break line reads, which are really cool, but really, really complex. I mean, they're like PhD level green reading. And I quit teaching those a long time ago because they were just too hard. It would take 6 to 9 months to get good at it. Oh my gosh. But really cool. But when you get it, it's like, wow, like it's really kind of an amazing thing, but it's really hard. So then I moved to the AIM charts, which is basically, if you can identify your position around the hole, the angle you are and how long the putt is, it would give you a very definitive break. Like it would say this putt breaks 9 inches or 43 inches or whatever. It was very digital, meaning you look up a number and you try to hit that number. And it's a super accurate read. But again, there was a big learning curve with it. Mm-hmm. Had a lot of success with that. Like Stacey Lewis used it, Scott McCarron used it, a number of other people use it. Matt Fitzpatrick still uses it. Aguilar uses it. I think McCarron still uses it, but it really only appealed to about 5% of golfers because it was very technical. And then what happened is I had to teach a group of 8 and 9-year-olds back in 2013, at the end of 13. And I'm flying on the airplane to go there, and I was teaching about 2 hours. It was at Rob Noel's in Louisiana, and he says, "We're teaching the young kids first. They haven't had angles in school yet, so you can't talk about angles because they don't know what a 30-degree angle is." He goes, "So you got to think of something else." And I was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" Because I've been teaching this for years and years. And so I'm sitting on the plane, and Rob Noel, and one of his students are bow hunters. And in bow hunting, you can use your thumb to figure out how far away the target is, so you know where to aim. And so because I was seeing Rob, I was like, well, let's take our thumb and just put it on the high side of the hole. For kids, we'll just get them where just get them hitting it somewhere above the hole, because kids usually just putt straight at the hole and don't factor in break. So they were feeling the high side, putting their thumb on the high side, and on average slopes, it's actually about perfect. And they were making all these putts, and I called it the junior read. And I came back and I told my instructor, like, oh, I got this really cool read that's for young kids, and nobody really paid any attention to it. And then like 2 weeks later, I showed it some mini tour players, and they're like, oh, we love this. This is awesome. And I was like, wow, that doesn't make any sense to me. And we kind of figured out if you use one finger per percent of slope. It actually matched really, really well. And I started testing it, and it turned out that that read matches the aim chart almost identically. Out to 20 feet, it's accurate to about 2 inches, which made no sense to me at the time. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. But then I showed it to Brian Gay, and Brian Gay went to Kapalua that 2 weeks later and shot the course record using it. And we didn't even really know how to use it properly. He shot whatever it was, 64 or something. And that's when I went, all right. And then Lydia Ko, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Unbelievable. So and I think it works this way for so many things. When you have to simplify something, you were forced to simplify it, and then it just kind of like rolled into this whole other adaptation of your system. So explain slope a little bit for all the listeners here and for myself even, and how do you go about figuring out, what's 1%, 2%, 3% slope?
Well, slope in AimPoint, the express read, which is the one with the fingers, we're always talking about side slope. So it's just left to right slope because the ball breaks because it's tilted sideways. No real brain surgery there. If you tilt it sideways, it turns sideways. And the more you tilt it, the more it turns. So we just have to put a number on it. So really what everybody's doing when they're doing an AimPoint read is similar to getting a yardage for a full swing shot. So you get your yardage. Maybe if you want, make some adjustments based on wind or lie or shot shape or whatever. But you're really just putting a number on it. And what we do is we learn how to feel based on feel with our feet what 1, 2, 3, 4% slopes are. It's actually really easy. Most people get it within 10 minutes and start picking up halves within 15 minutes. So they're saying 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. So the nice thing is that once you learn what a 2 slope is, it's a measured amount of slope. It's the same everywhere in the world. So every golf course you go to, a 2 is a 2 and a 3 is a 3. And so green reading really becomes the number is the number, and the real skill is adjusting to speed changes. So is it a fast 2 or a slow 2? But a 2 is a 2. So it makes it very, very reliable, regardless of optical illusions. I need to be able to go to any golf course in the world and get the first read right every time. And when you use the method, when you can feel your numbers, it's not a problem at all, frankly. So that's really what we're teaching tour players is how do you reliably go from course to course, whether they're flat or steep or whatever, and get really accurate reads in a very athletic, quick manner. This is a very athletic read because you're feeling slope, which is a very sensory, feel-based method. It's very visual because you hold up your fingers and it shows you where to aim, as opposed to saying aim 41 inches on the right. It says aim there. And you can do it in 20 seconds, no problem. So I think that's why it's been so popular on tours. It's very, very simple. It's very quick and it's very natural. There's no calculations involved.
And you said sometimes it can take people as little as 10 minutes to figure out how that feel of slope is. Is there any suggestions you have for us? Obviously, we can't see anything right now, but any kind of tips or tricks on ways that you can kind of start to really understand that as a golfer walking out on the green the next time we go out?
Yeah, I mean, the slope we do is a measured amount of slope, and it's in percentage of slope, otherwise known as grade. So it's not 1 degree of slope; it's 1% of slope, which most people get wrong. But you can buy a digital level that's got a percentage measurement on it, and you just put it down between your feet, and whatever number that tells you is the number. Well, a little bit simplified, but that's the number we're looking for.
Okay.
So if you're on the green and you stand on a slope and the level says it's 2.5, then that's the number we would use in Express, 2.5.
Gotcha. And I assume there's probably an app on the phone that you can use to measure that these days.
Yeah, there are some phone apps. I'm not a huge fan of the phone because it's a little bit short. So it's a little, you move it 2 inches and you get a different number. So it's a little bit too small. You really want a little bit bigger level, like a 9 or 10 inch level. But you can use that in lieu of nothing else to at least get you close.
Gotcha. Can you walk us through a little bit of the process? So what we're seeing when we see, let's say, Adam Scott get on the green, walks up, and kind of walk us through what he's going to do as far as going through the AimPoint Express system.
Yeah. So you'll see him walk down his line and feel in a couple different spots. And so what he's trying to do is really get the biggest slope. So you've got to, slopes change throughout the putt. And so a putt might have 4 different slopes in it. And the key is which slope do I apply to this putt? And there's an area of the putt, it's kind of the middle area of the putt where he's going to walk through. He's kind of looking for the biggest number. And when he finds that, he's going to bring that number back to the ball. So let's say it's 3. He thinks the max is out of 3. He's going to bring 3 back to the ball, hold up 3 fingers against the hole, and that shows him the mathematically correct amount of break. That's the crazy thing about it, is that when you hold up 3 fingers, you're really creating a launch angle. So think about a launch angle with a driver launches at some number of degrees, right? Well, when you hold up the fingers in front of your eye, you're creating a launch angle sideways. So you're seeing how far to the right do I need to start this ball? And it just happens to turn out that when you hold up 3 fingers, it is almost identical to the physics of how much the ball breaks across the 3% slope, which I know sounds crazy, but
that's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And that's why it was kind of bolt to lightning that this works. There's no reason why it should be that way. It just happens to be that's the way our fingers work, and that's the way our body geometry is. It's nuts that it works. And that's why people really struggle to understand. It's not just some hokey guesswork. It's actually, we've done so much testing against the physics and the software and the aim chart to verify that all these reads are accurate within an inch or two. And they are. And when you test it, you sit there and it just blows your mind, because the chart's saying this putt should break 9 inches, and you hold up 2 fingers and it shows you exactly 9 inches. It's just like, wow. There's some fine tuning for speeds and ups and downs and things like that, but it gets you so close, so fast. It's crazy.
Let's say a quick thanks to our sponsor for this week's episode, Rad Roller, the maker of some of the greatest soft tissue and myofascial products out on the market. And I just want to highlight and let you guys know that Rad has not just great individual products, but they've got some kits available where you can save money, but also get some great combination items. So they've got all these different products that have great uses on their own, but when you combine them, you can actually get more done. You can work on different parts of the body in different ways. So the first kit that they have is the muscle flushing kit, which has the Helix, which is kind of the specific helix-shaped roller, as well as the Rad Rod, which both are really great for flushing out the tissue. So rolling over it or rolling the rod over the muscles to kind of get some of the static stuff that's in your muscles, kind of flush that out and really get the tissue moving a lot better. They've also got the point release kit, which is the Rad block, like the yoga block, which doubles as kind of the carrying case, and the Rad rounds, which are the smaller balls, as well as the Rad roller ball, which you can use for kind of some trigger point therapy and just getting into specific spots. And then you've got the all-in kit, which combines both of those kits together. So if you haven't checked out any of the Rad products, or you do have some of the Rad products and you want to get a few more, definitely go check out the different kits that are available. You'll save some money, you'll get some awesome products, and you'll definitely be moving better and feeling better. So go to radroller.com and use the code 18STRONG. And so after Adam kind of walks the line, he gets his biggest measurement there. He comes back, he uses the fingers. Then you mentioned that getting the speed right is then kind of the one of the biggest hurdles once you understand how to read. So what are some of the ways that you can then help people become a better reader of speed, or is that simply just kind of a trial and error thing, or are there special drills that you have them do?
Well, it's more than trial and error. A lot of things. What I teach most of my players for adjusting to speed. The hard part about being an amateur golfer is that green speeds can change so quickly from course to course. On PGA Tour, they're playing 11s pretty much every week, with the exception of the really fast courses like Augusta and US Open, and Memorial can get fast and Sawgrass can get fast. But they're pretty much 11 week in and week out, because that's a speed where they get a lot of birdies. And what happens is the more you raise the green speed, the fewer birdies you get. And so the PGA Tour wants, let's say 16 under to win roughly. And if you run them too fast, you don't get to 16 under. So they have the luxury of having very consistent green speeds. When you have inconsistent green speeds, like most of us do, what I teach is basically a method where you can keep your stroke length kind of relatively the same for any given length putt, whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 feet. And what you're doing is you're just adjusting your timing or your rhythm a little bit. So when the greens get really fast, just slow everything down a little bit, and actually adjust very well. When the greens get slow, you've got to speed up a little bit with everything, and it has to be trained. If you don't train it, it's hard to do, but it doesn't take much training. Most people, again, within 15 minutes or so are starting to figure it out pretty quickly.
So I would imagine once somebody gets this, they start to practice it a little bit. They start to understand. They see the incredible results that they're getting. What are some of the experiences that you see, or some of the things that you hear from somebody that now went from maybe having no system whatsoever of reading a putt to now they've got this really tried and true and basically, simple couple steps to their system now?
Yeah. The number one thing I hear is people say it takes all the stress out of the putt. In other words, you know the ball's going to break a certain amount within a couple inches, so you just say the number is the number, and it allows you to just relax and focus on speed control only, rather than getting up to the putt and go, man, I don't know if it's right edge or left edge, and that adds stress. It adds an indecision. It usually creates bad speed or a bad stroke. And so you take the read out of the equation. You just say, get your number, and that's the end of it. Now you're just rolling your ball. So it really actually becomes more of a feel-based athletic putt versus a technical calculated putt. And that's where you really start seeing people putt the best and get the best performance, where they just relax, and really the only focus is speed control and feel.
Yeah, I would imagine you've seen so many different people with so many different styles of reading greens. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see many of us making when we're reading greens on our own?
The biggest mistake is always just using your eyes, because your eyes can be fooled so easily. So I see people visually looking around, and it's just sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But I think it's kind of proven over the last couple hundred years of golf that looking at greens and looking at your putt is not very accurate. I always ask people, I say, have you ever got the direction of a putt wrong? And everybody just laughs at me. And like, of course we have, daily. Well, it's because your eyes can't see small slopes very well, and they get subject to optical illusions like the mounding behind the green or hills or trees or whatever. They screw up your sense of tilt. Whereas your sense of feel is always correct, because if you couldn't feel tilt, you would fall down. You couldn't stand up and you couldn't walk, and nobody's falling down out there. So feel is such a well-developed sense that if you learn how to associate feel just with a number, then it doesn't matter what the visuals are. So what you typically see, courses that are historically visually difficult, you see AimPoint players usually perform very well there, whether it's in the desert or Evian for the girls is a great example. Evian's a very visually challenging course because you've got huge elevation change across the course and a lake 600 feet below it and mountains on the other side. And almost every year an AimPoint player wins. I think this year they were first, second, and third, because it just eliminates those optical illusions.
Yeah. I've heard so many times guys, clients of mine that have gone on golf trips, and they're like, oh, thank God we had this caddy, because I had this ball going this way. And he's like, nope, everybody misses it on this side. You got to go this way. And it just shows how our vision and how there can be illusions to what we're seeing versus what we're actually feeling. I know there's a course here in Missouri, Boone Valley, if you've ever been to these parts. And, they say, oh, just everything breaks towards the front gate. And no matter where you are, it can look a different way. And if you really go up and feel it, you see that or you feel that slope. But, it really can. It can really play tricks on your eyes.
Oh, easily. Well, especially in the hills and the mountains. And, and that's so the second biggest mistake I hear all the time is people saying everything breaks somewhere. Everything breaks to the valley. Everything breaks to Vegas. Everything breaks to Race Creek. That is a extraordinarily dangerous assumption, because the only thing the ball cares about is point of contact with the ground. Is it tilted left or right? It really doesn't matter where low points are in the surrounding area. I mean, you might get trends one way or another based on how they built the course, but modern green architecture typically has 2 to 3 different low points on the green, which means you've got 2 or 3 different areas the ball's breaking to, and they do that for drainage, so that the drainage, is more spread out. And I know for Augusta, I always get in fights with people, Masters Week, because I don't say it very often, but Race Creek doesn't affect putts out there. And that's a very controversial statement, but I've rolled thousands of balls out there before, and the ball breaks downhill. The ball breaks whichever the downhill direction is, that's where the break is. And the thing about Race Creek, if you walk around 18 holes, there's only 2 or 3 holes that are actually tilted towards Race Creek. You think about, 10 and 11. 10 and 11 are totally the opposite direction. So there's no possible way there's an effect there. Anyway, it's funny because people get really consumed by these myths, and the reality is it's much simpler and much less interesting than that. Is if you tilt the ball, it's going to break that direction. That's really all it ever comes down to.
Right. And so what happens when you come up to a scenario where you've got maybe one of these long, 40-foot double breaking putts? How do you then account for that with the system?
Double breaks are actually really easy. You're really going to kind of a central area of the putt, and you're getting your slope there, and it picks up a weighted average. And even at 40 feet, it'll get you within 4 inches every time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually silly when you actually start doing it, because it's just such a reliable read. And there are more technical ways to read a double breaker, but they don't really add much value. And every player I teach uses the simple way, which is just kind of go to the middle and get a number. Anything more than that, you can actually, it gets very tricky to get it right. And you actually make more mistakes than just getting kind of an average number.
You just start to make it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, you just start overthinking everything, and I find it degrades the read.
What would you say is kind of the most important range for golfers to really get good at this stuff and really work on and practice on a regular basis?
Well, I always get people kind of 6 feet and in first, because 6 feet and in, kind of 4 to 6 feet is a massively important range, because they're very uncomfortable and there's lots of par saves in there. And so if I'm working with a tour player, we always start 6 feet and in until we've nailed that. And then we'll go out to kind of birdie length, which is kind of 7 to 20-ish. But I always say, if all you ever did was learn how to hit short putts, you would get dramatically better. If you just learned how to hit 4, 5, 6 footers, you would get dramatically better.
Yeah, I think those are kind of the ones, the knee benders, where you're sitting there, you got 6 feet waiting for a par, and you're just kind of hoping to sink it in. Give us a little idea of what it looks like going to one of your clinics, either for the instructors or for the golfers out there, and kind of what the whole process looks like to learn the system or to become certified as an AimPoint instructor.
Yeah, for a player, a standard express class is 2 hours, and you'll go and you'll learn how to feel slope, and you'll learn short putts first, kind of 6 feet and in, which is always where we start. Then birdie length up to 20 feet, then long putts out to any length at all. If you have a 150-foot putt, we'll show you how to read that, no problem. And then double breaks, and then we show a little bit how to adjust for green speeds. Do all that in 2 hours. You hit a ton of putts. You're hitting putts the entire time. It's not a clinic where you're sitting around listening to people talk. You'll listen to 5 minutes of instruction, and then you'll hit a lot of putts. So the idea is you can leave and immediately take it to the course that same day, and you've hit enough putts that you're going to remember everything we did a week later or a month later. Instructors are first level certification is all day, and it basically teaches you the read, but then it teaches from an instructional level how to teach it well, because there's good ways to teach it and there's bad ways to teach it, and I've seen them all. And so it's really more about how to deliver the message and how to go a little deeper. If you have once somebody understands the basic reads, then you want to refine and fine tune a little bit. It gets more into those issues and speed control and aim and the kind of the next layers of putting. So green reading always comes first, because if you have a bad target, then everything else is going to be bad. So once you have a good target, then you know how to align, then you know where to point your putter face, and it's just a matter of really speed control.
Gotcha. And so if somebody wants to, either if they're a golfer and they want to get in touch, I assume they go to your website. And what about if somebody wants to host a clinic or something at their course? Because you mentioned that you go to a lot of different clinics from here, over the next several months, going to a lot of different courses. How would one go about getting that set up?
If you go to the website, there's all the instructors in the world are listed. There's about 300 worldwide. Try to find somebody close to you, and if not, or if you want to host, you can always get in touch with me through the website. But the easiest way is to try to find somebody relatively local to come out and host a clinic. They're great clinics. It doesn't take any level of skill or handicap level to do a clinic. I've taught people who have never touched a golf club in their life all the way up to number one of the world players, and I teach them the same thing. So it's really something anybody can do. I teach as young as 7 years old with no problem. So I would highly recommend do it. It's best 2 hours you'll get in golf instruction. The easiest thing you'll get in golf instruction.
Love it. I got a couple last minute questions for you here, Mark, before we wrap things up here on the show. I ask every guest the same questions here at the end. First one's Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
Caddyshack.
For sure. No doubt about it.
No question about that.
I love it. If you could play 18 holes of golf with anyone, past, present, anyone in the world, who would it be and where would you play?
Well, my favorite course is Augusta National, so I would want to go to Augusta. I struggle with who because for me, golf is just all about having fun with who you're with, as opposed to playing with some like great player. I think I would take my friends playing golf over, a lot of really great players, just because that's what golf is all about, is going out and having fun and having a beer and having a good afternoon out there. So I struggle to actually nail somebody down as far as who it would be.
So just
Scarlett Johansson. How about that?
That's a pretty good one. I didn't know you were friends with her. That's awesome.
Well, I'm not friends with her, but you can dream.
I love it. If you could pick a walk-up song to the first tee box, what would your song be?
Thunderstruck, AC/DC.
Man, I've been having a lot of AC/DC lately. This is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Just another question just kind of popped up. I'm sure, obviously, you just mentioned that you've worked with, junior golfers all the way up to number ones in the world. Aside from the AimPoint system and them being able to do the reading, what have you found? Are there certain things that you see in great putters that, because I think a lot of us think, oh, we're either really good putters or we're not. Obviously, we now know that there is more of a system to putting, but is there something that you've come across with some of these great players in the world that you see in them that maybe some of us are lacking?
I'll tell you the biggest things I see. Number one, none of them aim perfectly, but they all aim pretty darn well. So they're all within 1 degree accuracy aiming, which from 10 feet means you can aim inside the hole from 10 feet. If your aim is way off, it gets hard because you got to make such a big manipulation of your stroke to get the ball in line. So they're all pretty darn good aimers, number one. Number two, they tend to be more relaxed than everybody else. Like I see a lot of players who are very tense and they're thinking so hard and they're like, oh, I got to make this putt. And the really good putters I've seen just have a general relaxation where they don't care a whole lot either way, whether they make it or not. They just get up there and they roll the ball. They just try to put a good roll on it. If it doesn't go in, fine, go hit the next putt. And it's very different from a lot of junior players I see are, in that, must make, live or die mentality. And you don't see that with the great putters. I don't see it with the great putters. They tend to be fairly non-technical. Their fundamentals are good, but they're not thinking technically. They're just thinking, just put a good roll on it, move on.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's the one really. Those are the two really consistent things I see across people that I see in putt, and I'm really impressed with. The other is, and part of that is just mental strength. They can miss a 5-footer, and it's not going to blow their whole day after that. They just move on to the next one.
I would imagine that having some sort of a system too also kind of plays into that relaxation factor where you just know, you got that confidence. Awesome.
Right.
Any last piece of advice for the 18 Strong community before we let you go?
Putting is a lot easier than people think. I think it's the easiest part of golf. If you understand how to read greens, which everybody used to think was black magic, it's actually super easy. And as soon as you understand how to read greens, it will transform your putting. It'll absolutely transform it. Like I said, I've taught people who have never touched a golf club, and in 20 minutes they're getting the same reads I am. And I've done this for 15 years. So go out and do it. Don't be afraid of it. It's a very easy 2-hour class. Will change your life. Once you learn it, it works on every golf course in the world. And that's the big thing, is it's consistently going to work anywhere you go. And I believe just about anybody can be a really good putter. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but I've seen enough, players in my life where when you start putting pieces together, you'll be surprised how good you can get.
Well, I'm looking forward to going out and trying it myself. And do you have a book or any print or DVD or anything like that too, in case somebody doesn't have a clinic or an instructor available nearby?
Yeah, I've got a DVD. If you go to my website, there's an online streaming version. You can also buy a hard copy DVD that will go through the system in about 30 minutes and give you all the fundamentals. If you can't find an instructor, that's going to be your next best thing for sure.
Fantastic. All righty, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And I know that, hopefully we kind of cleared up some of the different thoughts and, misconceptions around the little finger pointing and things that we see from these players on the tour, and really realize that there is a system. You don't have to just kind of guess when you're reading the greens out there. So thanks again, Mark. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, that's it. Thanks for joining us this week on the 18 Strong podcast. If you want any more information on Mark Sweeney or the AimPoint system, you can find all the links from this episode in the show notes on episode number 185 at 18strong.com. Also, be sure to check out all the Rad Roller kits that they have at radroller.com. And if you haven't checked out our video series, Get Off the Golf Fitness Roller Coaster, it's time to stop going on and off of these programs, trying to get fit, trying to get in better shape, and then falling off the wagon. Go check out the 4 video series that we created. Get Off the Golf Fitness Roller Coaster at 18strong.com/roller coaster. You'll just put your email in there and we'll send you the videos free, no charge. You'll get those right away in your inbox. Thanks again for joining me this week. And again, we always love ratings, reviews on iTunes. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, be sure to do that so you get every single one of these in your inbox every single week as the new shows come out. Till next time, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong Podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.